The Mentalist episode finally here.
It's a big day.
Ooh,
Hey, we've
are you
had
nervous? Are you nervous at all to hear my rankings?
I wouldn't say nervous because I don't I'm you disappointed me a long time ago. So
Wow. All right.
no. I think I have very reasonable expectations.
Okay.
I, I'm intrigued by what you do, but I think I could guess.
Really?
Well, I think I could guess your top two.
Okay. Interesting. We'll see.
Maybe not the order, but I think
All right. We'll have
we'll
to
see.
see.
Yeah, we'll see. Do we wanna do this one? What's the format?
I
Just
was
because with
gonna
the
ask because we could. I think there's two ways we could do it. We could either go like, where do you rank season one? Where do you rank season two? Or we could go like, what do you have number seven? And then
yeah,
both reveal
yeah.
what season
It's
we
it's
have
gonna be
seven.
weird being like number seven, season, whatever number. Like it might get confusing.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you want to go by seasons? Because we'll also be able to talk, I think, more about.
why we played
It'll be
them.
a little confusing if we go like, what do you have seven, and we both
Yeah,
have different ones, and then we
yeah.
have like
So let's go.
talking
Let's go.
about them all.
Yeah, season by season, starting season one.
All right. Well, let's see how much we remember.
Yeah, I know specific details is tough. I was going through like the thumbnail pictures of the
Mm,
seasons of the episodes, trying to just like remember, refresh what was there, what was when.
yeah.
Um,
Hopefully, we'll be able to kind of like help each other out, maybe
yeah, I
if there's
know.
different things that we remember and that we don't
Um,
remember.
yeah, I know. You might remind me of something that happens in one season, and then I'll completely change it. Um, which will my rankings will be completely different. We'll see.
Wow. Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's been a long
Bro,
journey
I'm
to get
yeah.
here.
It feels so weird now. Like
I know this is always in the back of my mind, right? Like right when I
I'm
started watching it, it was like, okay, we're gonna rank them at some point, and it's
yeah.
kind of weird that we're like about to rank them. It feels kind of like high school graduation or something, where it's like, oh man, it's like actually here.
Yeah, it was one of those things like when I'm trying to get you to watch it, where it like
Mhm.
actually getting to the point where we finish it seems like so far in the
Yeah.
future. And we honestly like we went through it pretty quick. I don't know when we started,
Oh
but
yeah.
we
Yeah,
moved
for
fast.
sure.
But it's also weird just
It's
today. Like normally I'd
yeah.
I'd come home and eat dinner and I'd like put the Mentalist on while I'm eating. Today I'm like, dude, am I just gonna like sit there and eat? Like that's all I'm gonna do? Like I don't know.
And there's always, I mean, I go through this with every show because I tend to go through shows quickly, but there's always a period afterwards where it's like that period where I'm thinking, okay, I'll throw on, maybe I'm putting something in a spreadsheet or whatever. I'll throw on an episode of The Mentalist, and then I'm sitting there realizing, okay, well, there's no more episodes
Yeah,
of
like
that. Well, do I
what do
start
I
a
do?
new show? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to start a new show right now. Like, I don't really feel like starting something from the beginning. So what do I throw on that's not like the beginning of a new show? And it's like it's a weird
Yeah, yeah,
middle point almost until I start going crazy on another show.
yeah. These long shows are tough, man. They're
I
tough.
know they
They
are.
take like a toll on you.
Hmm. It's just
But
you got zoned in, and it's like,
mhm.
okay, go and go and go and go, and then it ends.
And it's just like it's gone.
Right.
So we'll see. We're in the
Right.
we're in the mourning period right now. We're grieving the loss, but this is how we'll celebrate it.
Okay. A little mentalist celebration.
Mhm.
Did you say one of your housemates is watching too,
He
or is
was
working
like
through it?
he was watching with me,
Gotcha.
but he was gone for one of the bigger, more important parts of the show in season six, and so he still doesn't know
Oh boy.
um, who Red John is. So he might go back and watch it himself, but I don't know.
Okay.
So
Wow.
he
Oh wow. So he just
doesn't.
skipped that part,
Yeah,
and that wow, which is you know we,
relatively
we might
important
have
piece.
we might have different opinions on what that means, but the fact that you can miss the most important piece of the show and then carry on watching the show is interesting.
Yeah, so that's like his is casual viewing,
Hmm.
just while I'm watching. So
Gotcha.
mhm.
All right. Well, we'll start with season one.
Season one,
Where do you have season one through seven?
I have it at seven.
Whoa. Really?
Hmm.
I have season one at third.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's one of the better seasons. I think it's one of the more pure seasons where it's like this is what the show is. There's a pretty good amount of Red John plot because they're introducing it and they're setting that up, and I think they do a good job setting that up.
Hmm.
But I think it's also the season with the most sort of like this is who Patrick Jane is. So
Hmm.
you get to know a lot of him personally outside of work, inside of work. You get to meet all the characters. I think they did a really nice job setting up the show in season one. I
So
thought it was very good.
yeah, let's be clear. This part of like I love season one. I think season one is phenomenal. Okay,
Uh-huh.
but the biggest thing that it has going for it that was making me want to push it up is just that like the introductory.
Hmm.
Like there's something about season one that just kind of grips you, and even the second time watching it, where I'm like, oh, I'm hooked. Like I want to watch the show.
Yeah,
Um, Learning about Jane, seeing that background, you're just it's not the start of his time at the CBI, but it's like early, like
yeah.
so it's early. Um, and so those relationships are still like starting to form. Um,
So you have
so
it. You have it. This is you. I mean, you like every season. Let's be. This is your number one show ever. But you have this. You think this is the worst season of the seven?
I do because
Why?
I think for the most part every season like builds off the last one and just keeps getting better and better.
Oh, I completely disagree.
Yeah, so
If
we'll
you all right, I ranked them all like 1 through 10 while I was watching them. What would you give season one then? Like, where's your baseline?
like out of 10,
Yeah.
8.2.
Okay, I gave season one 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's a
this
difference, but
we're
I'm surprised that you have season one is the worst
it
one.
was a difficult decision,
Hmm.
but I think I'm happy with it.
I just think it's such a. I think later seasons the show loses its way a little bit in terms of like the plots and stuff like that. And I think season one is just so pure. In like you get a little bit of him doing regular stuff, you get a little bit of him, doing Red John stuff, and then you also kind of figure out why he's chasing Red John, what his motivations
Yeah,
are, and I don't know. I think they did a really good job of doing that. I just think like I think in terms of sort of if you were to look at the season and say like what are they trying to do with this season, I think season one actually might be the best in terms of that. Like they accomplished exactly kind of like what they were trying to do.
mm, yeah. That's
Wow,
hey, it's tough.
I'm shocked.
You said you gave it 7 out of 10 season
Yeah,
one,
7 out of
and
10.
it was only third.
Yep.
Oh, that's not good. That's not good.
Okay, where do you have season two?
I have it 6.
Okay, I have it 7. I think season two is by far the worst, in
Yeah,
my opinion, for me. Because, and here's why: because you have all the stuff that season one set up, and I don't think season two does a great job like expanding on it at all, really. Because this was peak for me. Like when I was texting you, like what is going on with Red John? Like they just did not build on that really at all in the season, apart from like two or three episodes maybe, and it was like small stuff. I feel like
mhm.
it just was. It just felt like a regular TV show to me, which is not bad necessarily. Like, don't get me wrong, it's fine. Like if it was on TV in the middle of the day while I'm having lunch or something, I might flick it on instead of Friends or something like that.
Mhm.
But you know, it was just kind of like a regular show. They didn't do anything like great,
Yeah.
in my opinion, for season two.
I'll give you it in a lot of ways. This one is a regular show. Like they
Hmm.
don't do as much Red John as I had remembered. Like
Yeah,
I remember when we are talking about it, like I'm telling you that it's going to be regular, and then it
right.
wasn't really. Um, so my thing is just I love these characters so much that a regular
Yeah,
show I still like a lot. Um, but the stuff they did do for Red John, they did like expand it, right? So this is like the stuff with Bosco, which
right.
is really big, which is the first time you really get a sense of like the I think the power Red John has, the influence he has, sort of like his reach, like
Hmm.
it that kind of takes you off guard. I believe this is the season that LaRoche comes in, right?
It might be. Is that the one with LaRoche? This
No,
is where it's hard to remember.
no, is LaRoche later? Because LaRoche is his first time with the guy that gets set on fire.
Yeah,
That's
he
his
comes
first
in
time
after.
appearing.
He comes in after that, I believe. Yeah,
Okay,
to
so then
like
he
to
might be season.
investigate that.
He might be season 3. By the way, I think it's really close for me with 1 and 2, because
Hmm.
even though there's not a lot of Red John, it is like it builds upon it enough for me that I just put it above because I still love the characters. It's just like the Red John is advancing that much, so that's why I put it there.
Yeah, I can't remember quite if this is the one either. There was one season I remember the finale. Like I texted you, it was a pretty good finale, but then I started watching the next season immediately after because I wanted to see like where that went, and they just
And
abandoned it,
yeah,
like completely disregarded it, didn't even mention it. It was basically just like a completely new episode, like no carryover whatsoever. And I don't. This is where it's tough that we watch them so quickly because it's like the early ones end up kind of blending together.
yeah,
Um, but it was either I think it was either season one going into season two or season two going into season three where it was basically just like what the heck just happened. Like I
yeah.
was really looking forward to picking up where that left off, and they jumped like way ahead.
I think it's 2 to 3. I think you're
Okay,
right, but yeah, it's tough, and they do a lot of that, especially early, which is like I get the frustration with it, you know.
right.
Because season 2 ends with that's right, with Christina,
Hmm.
the psychic that he's kind of right, and then they find her, and she's like dead, but not dead.
Right.
And then it doesn't talk about it after that, right? Like it just kind of disappears. So I think
Yeah.
you're right, season 2 to 3, which was unfortunate, but it's still the ending of that season was so good.
Of two.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ending is pretty good. It's a pretty decent finale. It just for
Right.
me
I
it
get
felt like season one built up to the finale a bit better. Um Whereas season two, the finale just almost sort of came out of nowhere a little
yeah.
bit
Yeah.
because there was just no because apart from like a few things, there was just no Red John kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
involved at all. Especially because, like you said, like this is the one with Bosco, right? Where and he gets the case, so it's not even like you can't even really watch Jane kind of work on it all because he doesn't even
His
technically
work is
have it
like trying to
get
watch them.
get back on it, sort of. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a weird
It is.
kind of I don't know. The thing that baffles me most about the show is just that they have this really intriguing plot and they so often just like intentionally ignore it or get in their own way, sort of like
Yeah.
make
I
it
mean,
harder for them to tell that plot.
it's just yeah. There's only so much that they like. There's only so much you can do with
Mhm.
it because you have to draw it out, right? And so I think that's their biggest issue is just
Yeah.
that difficulty. But
All right. So not too much difference there.
no,
Um, this one might be. I don't know if we'll have. I don't know how we'll differ on this one. Where do you have season three?
I have it at 4.
Okay, that's exactly where I have it. Season two, by the way, I gave 5 out of 10 because, like I said, it was basically just like a. To me, it was kind of just like a regular show, and I don't love the characters as much as you do. Like I like certain. I really like Jane. I
Yeah,
like Cho. Some like Cho is sort of like at times he's super funny, and then other times just because of the nature of his character, he's just sort of there.
interesting. Yeah.
Um, and then was this the season where Rigsby and Van Pelt have their like they are forced to split up? So that's
Yes, because
not a
this is
thing.
when
So because I didn't like that part where it's like I didn't. It just felt like you lost that kind of. There was that was interesting to see them like pursue it, and then it was like okay, now it worked out. I feel like they sort of played that card too early, where it was like okay, it's worked out for them. They're together, and then they were not together, and it was like okay, well, I don't
yeah.
know.
It's a little like Ross and Rachel esque, where it's
Yeah,
like they're like you're clearly building up to the romance, then they're finally dating, and over some stupid,
it's just like bang
it's
done.
just gone,
But then
and then it comes back.
the intrigue of like oh are they going to date is kind of gone because even if it comes back it's sort of like well we already did that once like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
know that it's there.
So
um
yeah, but
so
this because this
I
is
think that was another reason why I think you kind of lost an interesting dynamic that you had in season one of like oh Rigsby kind of likes Van Pelt and like Cho would tease him about that and stuff and then you could so it affected like all the dynamics of the entire cast I think
yeah, but this is when she starts dating
a
her
lot
good
of them.
friend
Yeah,
McLaughlin. So
right,
and as much as you might, you don't like that relationship as much as her Rigsby, you don't realize how important it is.
at the time, yeah,
So yeah,
correct.
um,
um
but season 3, I like it a lot. Like this is where we have LaRoche come in, I believe, right?
I think so.
And it builds up to a really good finale.
Yeah.
Um, and it is insane watching it a second time because like knowing all along. Um, but the whole build up where they have like the different hotel rooms on the different floors,
Yeah,
trying to catch it, so they think they have the Red John suspect,
yeah.
and then they don't. And it's crazy because they um they think it was what Bertram, right?
Bertram.
Which is
Yeah,
wild.
you're right. Looking back, yeah,
Later,
I was thinking about that as well. Which
yeah,
we could spoil. We're talking about all the seasons. We can say whatever we want. Like
yeah,
they could have they could have got someone right then and there, like a big fish
yeah,
in that association. Like, obviously not necessarily big in terms of like he's not like the president of that association, but like the head of the CBI would have been a big takedown.
yeah. Like Jane and Bertram are sitting there together,
Yeah,
and then Bertram leaves. They get McLaughlin, and then he thinks he kills her. It's just crazy.
yeah,
That's like, and it's even crazier because the first time you watch that, you assume it's just like they brought Bertram there for no reason. It's whatever. You're
yeah.
not realizing this guy is in the Blake Association. So
Right.
it's crazy.
I think that was probably the best season finale of all seven. I think personally. Um,
It's up there. It's up there.
I think it's the best one. I think at the time of what like the first time you watch through it, I think it's the best one because you have so many twists that you don't see come. So you have that whole thing, but right with like stalking, we think we're going to get him.
Mm-hmm.
Then they figure it out. Okay, here we go. Now how are we going to get him? How is he? He's pretty smart. How are we going to? And at the
Right.
time, right, you think it's Bertram. So you think, wow, he's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
right in front of them. How is this? Are we going to get to kind of figure that out? They
Right.
show up. Then you're like, wait a minute, it's not Bertram, it's O'Laughlin, and then so then that's dealt with, right? And you think,
Yeah.
okay, well, that was a pretty good finale. It was climactic, whatever. Then they call, and it's the guy, and it's a guy sitting, and you're like,
Right. Now you're
oh,
freaking out.
and his voice does like the guy kind of
He
fits the
fits. He fits the
like,
vibe. Yeah.
yeah, he really like. I was I gotta admit something here. I was I was kind of on Bertram's tail pretty early on, right? I thought it was him. He ended
Yeah.
up being kind of one of the final suspects, whatever. I'll admit, part of the reason I thought it was him, and part of the story. You remember I texted you that I was scrolling through YouTube and a video popped up with
Yeah.
like all red John. I was like, oh no, I can't see that. So I hit it. But I did out of like the brief like second that I saw it, I kind of saw like the hairstyle. So I saw well, I don't even know what you call that, but like the side with the no
It's
hair on
like you're
top.
bald. Yeah, balding, but you have hair on.
Yeah. And so Bertram like matched that. So that was
Mm-hmm.
another kind of checklist, but I didn't want to reveal that at the time. But he
Mm-hmm.
fit a lot of other stuff. But that guy fit that like character so well that I was like, okay, well maybe that whatever they used for that thumbnail was just like a different
Yeah.
scene that somehow other related because this guy really seems like him. And
Mm-hmm.
especially because you think he's leaving, you
Mm-hmm.
think he gets away, and then bang, he gets him, and you're
It's
like, what? And
right.
then
You
I mean
just
we've talked about it so many times, but like the look afterward, like wrapping that up was just so like there's at time right. You love the show. I thought it was a fine show, but there were absolutely times that it was like they nailed this specific moment. There's one in season 7 that we were talking about that it's
Mhm.
like they just nailed it. I think
Yeah.
that was a moment that they just did perfect. Like it comes
Yeah.
out of nowhere, and then you just see the peace in his face that he has done what he set out to do. He doesn't care about getting arrested. He's perfectly fine. He's no harm to anybody. He puts the gun down. Like
Yeah.
that moment for me was just like they did that perfectly, which I think is a big reason why I thought this was the best finale.
Yeah. It like really, really good. So
Yeah.
couldn't agree.
So the reason it's only fourth for me is just because similar to season 3, until that point, there's not a ton going on in terms of that plot. Like I think season 2 and season 3 for the first probably like where they're like a little over 20. So for the first probably like 17 or 18 episodes are very close in my mind. Where like
Yeah.
it's fine
Right.
TV.
Right.
Like I I didn't dislike watching them. I enjoyed watching Jane do his thing, and I enjoyed parts of each episode and whatever. But it wasn't like oh, it's on the edge of my seat the whole time. And then but I think 3 just nails the ending so well
Mm-hmm.
that I put it up there. And then it's also right. That's the whole. There's the whole thing with like Grace and O'Laughlin and high like that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think 3 landed the plane a lot better, but it was kind of a shaky flight to get there, similar to 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the same way I have it where I do, except I don't view it as a shaky flight at first, but I just think the ending like nails it perfectly. Um, and it's so good.
I give that one 6 out of 10 personally
Yeah.
because the ending gets it a full point higher.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Well, obviously I would have it higher, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean we're operating between 8 and 10
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
all of these. For me, we're going the full all the way down to 5 and then up.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So we both have season 3 at number 4. Where
Yep.
do you have season 4?
I have it at number 3.
Okay, I have it at number 2.
Yeah. Okay. I knew this one was going to be in your top 2. Um, yeah. I mean, it's season 4 is really where this show hits like
It starts picking up for sure.
this is like peak Mentalist. It starts to get to that point. The show is crazy. I mean, there's so many different things that are introduced. There's different people, and there's like little things that I didn't even remember that I loved. So it's interesting. There's a few characters that I think the first time watching it, I didn't like at first or for a while,
Oh, really?
but now watching I like. So LaRoche
Okay.
is a good one. LaRoche just made me mad the first time. This time
Yeah,
I was just like he's really good at his job.
I can see that for sure.
He's
Yeah.
so good at what he does. And then obviously when I know the like redemption that comes, so to speak, that's where we're like there's a couple characters that start out where the people don't really like them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the characters in the show don't like LaRoche. But by the end, everyone really does, right? And he's sort of like a member of the team, not really. So knowing how it ends when it starts, it like completely changes my view of them. And so another one, which for different reasons, but is Summer.
Yeah.
I really like Summer. I love her and I love her in the
Why?
show.
Okay, why though?
Dude, I don't know.
I just find her annoying. And so
I
here's the thing. I find like her character, like maybe, I don't know if that's the actor's real voice or not, or whatever, but I find the voice a little bit annoying. Her personality kind of annoys me, like just how kind of like all over the place it is. But then she never gets any sort of like, so LaRoche, I agree. The first, like, since it's my first time watching, I'm
right.
like, man, this guy, I just, there's
I hate
something
him.
weird about him. I don't like him. Like he's kind of a hardo on everybody. He's mean to like like this is the first time that like Rigsby and Cho don't really get
Yeah,
on with
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
superiors. I didn't like that about him. But he has redemption. Summer just kind of never does.
I
Like
know. So
she's
this is
kind of annoying, and then that's it.
right. So that's why this is a little different because I feel like I remember not liking her, at least at first, but then I'd like start to like her in the show. This time I just like I was excited. Like I was waiting. Like when is Summer coming to the
So
show?
why?
I can't really explain it. I think she's funny. I just think she adds a fun little element to the show. And it's interesting like the dynamic of Cho that she kind of brings out because it's
Okay.
like such polar opposites. And it's where there's like the part of me when they break up that's like sad.
Oh, I
And
wasn't sad at all.
I couldn't remember if they got back together, but I was like, I don't think they do because I don't think she's at the end.
Yeah.
But it also objectively, like Cho should not be dating her. Like
Yeah.
she, right? Like
It's
this is
against the rules. Yeah.
but it's also just like a bad mix.
Yeah.
Like at
It
the end of the
is.
day, it's just
It
not
is.
good. But I
Right.
just enjoyed the dynamic of the show. I can't explain it, but I think she's a good addition to the show.
I think part of what I didn't like about her was that it felt like Cho is kind of painted as this super competent cop, right? He follows all the rules. He does things very well. He's very good at his job. He's a great interrogator. And then Summer comes in, and it's sort of like it's not the same Cho that we've been seeing. Like, I mean, Cho is one of my favorite. Like, he's up there. If I were to rank all the characters, he's probably up in the top two or three. And I just don't think season four Cho is same like with Summer. Like, there's a lot of things Summer does that it's sort of like, okay, the Cho that we know, this is like, okay, that's not acceptable. I can't do this anymore. You're done, kind of thing. But it's like they sort of just keep her in there, and Joe's
But
like,
dude,
oh,
but that's also
I
no,
just don't like that. I feel like it just doesn't go with the show that we know.
I think it's accurate to human nature though. Like people
Maybe,
people compromise stuff because of love, romantic interest.
yeah, I
Like
guess so. I don't
people
know.
do stuff that
I
you
think
wouldn't
I just see
expect.
Cho as very like black and white. Like this is good, this is bad. This is like Cho sees it straight on, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Summer. I had an exact opposite reaction to when she left. They said goodbye. I was like, good riddance. Get her out of here. It couldn't have happened quick enough.
That's funny.
And then
But
when she makes like a cameo later on, like you gotta be kidding me.
yeah, the cameo she doesn't really do much either. So it's
No,
just
that was
kind of
just unnecessary.
yeah. But I'm trying to think. The end of season four also has a really good finale.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think it is pretty good.
This
I just
might be
think I was
my
a
favorite finale.
really I was a little disappointed with it at the time. Like it felt it. So the thing that frustrates me a lot with the show is this. It sort of operates on this premise, and certainly right at the time that it was coming out, it sort of is a show that operated on kind of like almost like clickbaity kind of thing, where it's sort of like so. For example, like Marvel, sort of people are kind of getting frustrated because it feels like a chore to watch it. Like they feel like they have to watch it to keep up. It sort of feels something like that where you're sort of, or at least for me, right? It's different for you, but for me at least, I'm watching it to see this Red John plot progress. And so every episode, and I'm sure that's probably, I'm not alone in that. I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel that way. But it sort of feels like every episode you're kind of watching it to be like, okay, is there going to be something to do with Red John here? And then there might not be, but it's still
Yeah.
pretty enjoyable. What does
Right.
happen, but there's a little bit of disappointment. Like, oh man, I was really hoping to see some progression.
Yeah.
And season four finale felt to me like they really were promising, like, okay, this is going to be a big moment. Jane's in the car with him, right, or this and that. And but by the end of the episode, it's sort of almost just like, okay, and we are not really any closer to finding him again. Like it sort of felt like a microcosm of that in like one episode as opposed to stretched out over a season. To me,
I
at
don't know,
least,
dude, because there's a
he gets you do right. Lorelai ends up being really important, so there's that. But upon first viewing, it sort of just feels like, oh, and now we're right back to right. They make such a big point of he had this 6 month plan, and it was all for this, and it doesn't really work.
I mean, okay, so in the end, the six
Yeah,
month plan is crucial, is part of the reason he does catch Red John.
because of Lorelai or what?
Yes, yes.
Yes, because of Lorelai. But
Because
in the
because
moment,
but it's
it feels like
because
he failed.
yeah, because he got that close. So it feels like you failed, but there's also so you get Lorelai, which is
Mhm.
really important
Right.
because that's the best suspect. They've had a
Yeah.
number of people in custody, right? This is the best one. And it's also you really get where he's in the car and he says someone from the FBI told me, right?
True.
Right? Because he brings the watermelon that's supposed to be Lisbon's head. The
Right.
the FBI told Red John like this is all fake. That's
Hmm.
how he knew. So now you real this is where you fully understand like
It's bigger than Red
Red
John.
John is pulling strings like all the way up. You know
That's
what I'm saying?
true.
And so I think you walk away from this like now we have a better idea of what we're up against, along with the fact that we have Lorelai. So that's why I think in the end, it's always like this.
Mhm.
You're so close, you feel like it's going to end, but then you didn't quite get it. But you have
Yeah.
something, right? Like every time Jane was doing it, it feels like you have nothing, but he's making progress.
That's
Um,
true. I just think on the first viewing it was a little bit like, oh man, like that kind of ended up not like because I also didn't like the whole 6 month like I
yeah.
don't know it did I you know I it didn't feel there are certain things that the show kind of holds from the viewer because I don't know at time it's almost like at times we're watching Jane from like Lisbon or Rigsby or whatever point of view. Then there's other times where it's sort of like we're seeing things from Jane's point of view and like there's certain like I wish that we would have sort of known that it was kind of a ruse, I suppose, like
Mm.
where I because part of what I like about Jane is that he has the charisma and the confidence and this and that. So it's sort of just like, man, so he's just kind of down on his luck. Like, I don't know. I didn't like that side of Jane, but then knowing like I don't know, there were just some things that in the finale where I was kind of like, God, I don't know. Whereas the episode before the finale, I really liked. Like I
Mhm.
thought it was really good. And then I was excited to see where that went for the finale, and I didn't love it. I personally, when that was happening, right, that's the one where he has the big blow up with
Yeah.
Wainwright, who was another character that I was just like, what the heck is this
I
guy's
was gonna say
deal?
finale gets rid of him.
It
That's great.
does, it does, yeah. But part of what I didn't like about that was, right, I was sort of, I didn't hate that was the thing. I didn't hate the actor, I didn't hate the job. I didn't like the character though, and I thought he was going to be important. So when they just killed him off, it was almost like when they killed off Snoke in Star Wars, where I was like, oh well, all right. I guess he was just like a annoying character. Then he wasn't like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought he was going to be connected to Red John somehow. Like because I know we talked at one point about how he would react when they gave him like Red John files and stuff, and he seemed like they were setting him up for something,
yeah.
and maybe they were. Maybe he was in that association or something,
I
and we
think
didn't know. But
it
yeah,
what
I
it
don't know.
I think what that more was doing was it was starting to give us a sense of the deal that the CBI had with the FBI,
Yeah,
right? Because remember that job, so the head of the CBI,
right,
which was Hightower, which was Minnelli, they were reporting to the FBI on all Jane
right.
was doing. So I think in reality that was we're seeing that now, but we didn't understand what it was at the time. But we're starting to have this idea of like why is he working together? So in
Okay.
the moment it seems weird, but then when you learn about the deal they have, all that kind of makes sense. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah, I would have loved it if he was like if him being like, oh yeah, okay, the FBI is looking into this would have been like, okay, they're get like I'm involved in this somehow, and they're now that like before it was under my control, I controlled what went out, whatever. Now the FBI is in on it. It might like I might be kind of out of my depth here, sort of thing. Like I would have loved to see that play out.
Yeah.
But so I really loved the episode before because I thought that what we were seeing when Jane like blew up on him was Jane like almost realized that and felt like he needed to get like space away in
Mm,
order to like he I thought what was happening was Jane realized that Wainwright was like reporting to Red John or something. And so he was like, to catch Red John, I have to get away from Wainwright, which means I have to leave the CBI, but I can't be suspicious. So I have to make him like, and I was
yeah.
like, whoa, that is going to be really cool. And then it kind of, none of that came to fruition or whatever. And I was like, oh man, that would have been really cool. Um, but I think I love, which it's interesting because I feel like I'm kind of ripping on season 4 a lot, considering it's my number 2. But
Yeah, no,
I think it did a really good job, like progressing the Red John story. I
it's
think
all
it did a
throughout. This one
yeah.
is yeah.
Whereas some of the other ones, right, it was kind of there, but it would be like 2 minutes at the end. There's a lot of these episodes
Hmm.
that have direct ties to Red John, and you're dealing with the trial. I think this is one of the best seasons at carrying where the last one left off, and I think it was crucial that they did that because if coming off of season 2 they pick up something like random in season 3, and then you have the season 3 finale that's so good, and then if they were to pick up somewhere random in season 4, I would have been like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I thought they did a nice job with the season 4 premiere. So
yeah.
um yeah, I think this was the first one where I was the whole season I was like, oh, all right, here we go. This is getting
Yeah.
really interesting now.
Right. Right.
I just think they didn't quite stick the landing as good as season three did. Like if you gave us the season like a season three finale on the end of season four, it would probably be easily number one for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Season five, where do you have it? Season four, by the way, I gave 7 out of 10. So that's where I'm starting to get like, oh, this was a good, like good solid
So, well,
season. Like I really
that's
like it.
that's what you ranked season one. So it's the same.
Yep. So, but this one was a high. Like this, I didn't feel like doing decimal points or whatever. But
Yeah.
season
Yeah.
one would have probably been like
High sevens. Yeah.
between like 7 to 7.5. This one would have been like up closer to 8, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Season five. I
Hmm.
have it one.
Me too.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know you do too. I know you do.
I gave it 8 out of 10, and
Okay.
it would probably be closer to like the high end of the eights if I were to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd give this out though. 9.7, 9.8. Like
I thought season five was really solid.
season five is phenomenal. So this is what I said. 4 and 5 are really where it's like
Hmm.
start to finish, like it is going.
You're
There's a lot
going.
of Red John. Season five also has Volker, which is probably the best side plot.
Yes,
At least these first few. So it's like
100%.
maybe the best little storyline that's not Red John. It's a few episodes. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
The whole mole in the CBI type thing, someone leaking information, that's really good. Um,
Which I
and
figured out, by the way, at one point, like right before they revealed it, I was like, "Oh, that's who it is,"
really,
and then they showed it basically, and I was like, "Oh, yes, here we go." Now, how do they figure that out?
because they show it with Volker, but
Hmm.
then Volker is caught and it doesn't have anything to do with her, and then it
Hmm.
shows up again a little later, which is
Yes.
another one. That's funny. So my memory was faulty because I remembered how they catch her vaguely, but in
Mm.
my head they caught her on their way to Volker. So when they catch Volker, I'm just like, this isn't right. Like
Yeah,
they have to
you're
catch
right,
her. I
because
just totally forgot
she ends up being just like a general
because
leak too, right?
she goes after LaRoche. Remember, because she was leaking to a bunch of
Mm.
people, and so LaRoche figured it out. She sends people into LaRoche's house to steal his Tupperware. That's how
Yes.
we the CBI, Jane, Lisbon, Riggs Bellman
Which,
end
by
up.
the way, the Tupperware. Oh my gosh, that's revealed in this season, right? Like what's in the Tupperware
Yeah,
towards the
yeah,
end, maybe.
yeah.
Jeez, that I mean that adds a whole nother
That is
dynamic to LaRoche. Like, wow.
like horrific, but
Yes.
crazy. But yeah, season five, and then this is Lorelai, which Lorelai is the
Yeah.
most important character to Red John.
She is such a good character.
Yeah, she's so good, and Jane and hers dynamic is really good
Yes.
because it's like this.
This was one I remember because I remember asking you and you had said like you really don't like Erica, right? Is that her name?
Yes,
Because you don't like
Erica Flynn.
how
Yes,
Jane like
she's
would
the worst.
be
She's the
whatever.
worst.
But whereas Lorelai, it's like you can totally understand why Jane would be fascinated. Like you
Yes,
can hold that comes across so well.
yeah, and it's this whole like dynamic of Jane obviously does legitimately care for Lorelai,
Yeah.
but there's still it's like he's on a mission, and
Right.
Lisbon's kind of at this point she's probably getting jealous, and she's
Oh
that
yeah.
dynamic is frustrating. But it's so good. Season five is where it narrows it down to that list of suspects.
Oh, and that was so that whole thing where like you can just man, I just love when he's talking about Red John, how his character changes. And I mean, it was always kind of a smallish part of the episodes that it happened in, but there was a handful, right, where it was kind of the end of the episode. Lisbon would come up to the loft or whatever, and he'd be like, "Okay, I got this clue, I got whatever I've been going through, and now I'm down to however many it was at the time." Like they did that a few different times, but every time they did it, I was like, "Oh, here we go. He's got it down to like 2,000. We're getting
Yeah,
close."
like
And then I'm like, "All right, well, we're on that. You know, there's still a long way to go." And they'd be like, "Okay, I've eliminated." What I've eliminated is now like 430. And I'm like, whoa, he's down to 430? No way. And then he
yeah,
gets it down, right? And it's like,
seven.
yeah, he gets it down to 7. And then in the finale, the one is right where the guy like he gives them the video of saying like these are the 7, and that was a moment that it was almost similar to that part of season 4 where it's like you maybe feel defeated, but I thought that this was so much better. Where like on one hand, it's like yes, he doesn't quite have Red John where he wants him, but they did
Yeah,
it so well in a
yeah,
way of where you're like, whoa,
yeah,
okay, this is
because
serious now.
the cool thing about this is the information you thought you had, like in the other ones you think you have a lead, you think you're close, and then
Mhm.
oh, you're not actually as close as you thought. This one it's like you are close,
Yes,
right?
he
Like
just knows it.
because the 7 is
Right.
correct, but now he knows it.
Right.
Now and
There's a piece of you where you think right. It's intriguing because you think Jane. This whole idea is that Jane is ahead. He's so secretive. He's ahead of the game. Red
yeah,
John doesn't know. Nobody knows what he's thinking. That's why he's so secretive
yeah,
about it. And then so the reveal is not like, oh man, we're back where we started. The reveal is like you're not ahead. Actually, I know
yeah,
what's going on the whole time. And it's so good because like the scene that is on video
Hmm.
happened so long ago and stuff keeps progressing as like we see it keep progressing, and so we're like, oh, here we go. And so it not only brings like it brings you back with him to like, oh
Yeah.
man, I remember when that happened and he said like, oh, he's gonna get you, and then he did get
Yeah.
you, and you're like, wow, but we didn't know that this happened either.
Hmm. It's so good.
Yeah.
And it just, and this one is sort of where it's like, all right, I know your list of seven. You have your list of seven. Like, game on. I'm gonna
Hmm.
start killing again. And he says I'm gonna kill, right? Like, I'm gonna kill a happy memory, which had already happened. But it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, it feels very much like, all right, final leg of the race.
Which
We're gonna
I wish
we're
we
gonna
knew.
sprint to the
I
finish.
wish it was revealed how he figured. Like that's some of
This,
the
okay,
stuff that I'm like, I wish we got that. Like,
because this is what I said. I think we talked about this at one point where I was like, it's all impressive, but everything that happens is like there's an explanation for it.
yeah,
I hate that when Jane and Red John have their meeting and he's like, "You want to know how I got the names off your list?" Jane says, "No." I'm like I do, because this is the only
but he
thing.
does say he does give an explanation.
Not for the list.
He says that he says like, oh, it's because I'm a real psychic,
Oh
which
yeah,
is like, come on.
right. So it's annoying. So that's why I wish we knew. I wish we knew the trick that he used to get that, because it's like you can try to think about it and say like, is he following Jane enough that he can know all the people that are plausibly around, being around for all the murders is a big one.
Hmm.
So knowing Jane's fear, can he know, right? Like, he knows Partridge. He obviously knows Bertram's
Right.
in the Blake Association. He obviously knows who Styles is because there's that clear connection. So it's like you can kind of infer, but it still is like there's no way you would be able to get it to the same number. But
Yeah.
it would be interesting. So
Yeah. If there's just like that, there's just a lot of those things that I'm like, I wish we were like, I wish we knew how to get the seven. I wish we knew how we, knew the memory or whatever. I wish we could have seen like we've talked about like it would have been cool to see like a flashback from Red John's point of view. It would have been cool, right? We know Brett Styles is getting information from somewhere, but we never find out like what the deal with that is.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
that would have been cool to maybe see if there's a direct route, like if somehow how he's getting that information.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's just some like to get and
because
because
because it
especially because
never.
some of the seven are like right there's three that are in the association, but that means there's four that are just not like they're just wrong,
Yeah,
right? So the fact that he got those seven correct, including the ones that were not associated,
yeah,
is like how do you do that?
yeah. It's crazy. It has to do with some, has to have something to do with the fact that all seven of them have to have like plausibly been around to commit every murder Red John had ever committed.
Yeah.
So realistically, that's a very small number of people.
Hmm.
Um, and Red John would have known at least enough about all of those guys. But it's still, so it's like you can kind of get pieces of like maybe, but it's still at the end of the day, it's like how do you get the list exact? It's crazy. So I would have liked to see it. And
Right.
it's true, like with Styles, you never really understand why he knows so much about Red John because he's not in the Blake Association.
Yeah. It never really
But it
comes to
it has to be
fruition.
the fact that Red John was involved with Visualize at one point, and so there's a connection
Yeah.
there that you don't realize. I
Yeah.
think because I think in the end, Blake Association is only law enforcement. So I kind of
Right.
feel like the way it reveals is that like I almost have this attitude of like, oh, Brett Styles isn't that bad of a guy. He's not in the Blake Association. He seemingly liked Jane when really like he was like he murdered people. Like he was a
True.
horribly corrupt criminal. And obviously there's a connection because Red John was in Visualize. So it very well could have been there was some sort of relationship or connection there,
Do
you
we
know?
think that he becomes Red John because he was in Visualize?
That's possible. We don't
Like
get a backstory.
maybe he's a relatively normal person until he's in that association. It like unlocks this really messed up part of him.
Very possible.
Yeah, wow.
Interesting.
I was just kind of scrolling through some of the episode descriptions, and you also have this is kind of where like Kirkland stuff starts
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah.
So he's super interesting as well. Like he's
Very.
sketchy at one point. I was kind of like, wow, he really could like because you also
He feels like he could be Red John.
yeah, and you see him. I mean, looking back on it, it's a little bit more confusing, I think, at times. Like, why did he, there's certain people that he like killed who made like they could have given Jane information and he kills him. And so at the time is like, oh well, he's covering for Red John sort of thing. But
Yeah,
then looking back, knowing what happens to him, it's sort of like it's a little bit
yeah.
weird. Like it's a little bit
So
messy. Like, why did that
the
kind
one
of
the
happen?
one the one that is the big question is the guy he kills in the hospital,
Right.
right? So I think the reason is you clearly see like um Kirkland's hunting Red John
Yeah.
himself,
Yeah.
but he doesn't want Red John caught. Like he wants to catch and kill Red John,
Yeah.
right? And so I think he knows with that guy in the hospital, the CBI is going to be able to take him. Like Jane is going to be with him.
Hmm.
And so Kirkland won't have the opportunity to use him for information. So I think
Right.
it's basically just like a
It's like covering like if like I'm the only one and no one else can get to him kind of thing.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just like I want to catch him. I can't use him for information, so I don't want Jane to have him. I think
Right.
that's what that was.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking as well. It's just a
Yeah.
little bit like it
It's
when
fine.
you're when in your mind when you're thinking like, okay, that's who it is. Looking back, knowing that it's not, it's sort of like, okay, well now
Yeah.
what was
It's
like that's a
weird.
little bit
Right.
weird.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean it's just a great um there's just so many good
This
episodes this
is yeah.
season.
This season is just peak.
Like when I previous seasons where I'm kind of like, okay, nothing's been happening, like where I would text you like 10 episodes in and like not much has happened, whatever.
Yeah.
This is
This
like
is like
when I'm going through like, we're several episodes in and it's yet to
not
like
involved.
slow down.
Yeah.
It's like Laura, the whole Lorelai thing at the beginning lasts a while, and then was this the one with Volker in it, or was that four?
Yeah. This is five.
So then at some point, like when that sort of dies down, then you get the Volker stuff to kind of like tie you over for probably like what, like 3 or 4 episodes, maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that, kind of
Yeah.
here and there. And then there's one that's just like all him, and then the Red John stuff picks right back up again, like
Yeah.
towards the end. So,
It's so good.
yeah, great season, definitely number one.
Yeah. Easy.
Um,
Season 6.
season 6. So what do you have open? You have 5 and 3 open.
No. 2,
5 and 2.
2 and 5. Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
And you have
I have
5 and 6.
5 and 6. Yeah.
All right. This is going to be 5 for you, and it's number 2 for me.
Yeah. Yep. Correct.
So this could have been 3.
Hmm.
You can argue putting 4. The reason is, I mean, at the end of the day, you look at each of these seasons are like 20-some episodes. Start to finish, 4 and 5 are so good, build on each other.
Yeah.
6 obviously has the issue where the first 10 or like first 8
Yeah.
are a lot better than the last 14.
Yeah.
But those first 8 are so good and just like the pinnacle of the show that for me I have to put it to because it's in it. I know we can get into and we've done it like the whole Red John reveal, but I love it so much and
Yeah.
I understand the complaints people would have,
Right.
but I can remember watching it the first time and just how insane it is and watching it again. So I just think the first chunk of the season that is about revealing Red John and then the finale of that is so good. It's good enough to put it in number 2. Just not good enough to put it above season 5 for me when 5 is like start to finish, just Red John, that plot is developed. It's just so good. So I have it at 2, very close with number 3. Yeah.
I think this would have been, if I was ranking them as like a second viewing, it would maybe jump. Probably have right above it 3. It could maybe jump 3. I don't know. Because the 3 finale is so good. But there is, right. So like you said, there's I think like 22 episodes or so. The first 8 are significantly better, and even in that first 8, as a first viewing, there is parts of them that are sort of like not quite as like all forward as I would have thought that they would be for kind of like rushing ahead. Like, so looking back, obviously the Napa Valley one is a huge episode. However, at the time, it's doesn't feel.
But it's a Red John suspect. You
Yes,
just made it up in your mind that it wasn't him.
You do, but there's like at the end, it feels like, right. So the big thing with him is, oh, he's afraid of heights. Like that must mean something. But then he goes up on the roof and saves him, and it's sort of like, all right, so cross him off the list. So to me, at that time, it was like, okay, it's fine. Like we eliminated a suspect. That's progress, whatever. But it wasn't like, well, wow, we're really getting close to him. Looking back, obviously, it is probably a better episode on a second watch, but obviously on first viewing is maybe not as heightened. But yeah, then the problem is
But
just
to be fair, that's just the takeaway. Because first viewing
right.
the whole episode, the suspense is like really good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. But I will say that it also struggled a little bit from what my biggest complaint about their whole Red John thing is that like this is, I think out of all of them, maybe this one struggled the most where, right, I know that, Sheriff McAllister is, or whatever they keep saying, like Sheriff McAllister's on the list or whatever however they say it.
You have no clue.
But when he shows up, when they show up to Napa Valley and whatever, and he shows up, I'm kind of like, all right,
I've
cool.
never seen
Who's
this
this?
guy
Why are we
before.
doing a random episode right now? And even like throughout the episode, because the name wasn't super familiar at first, it didn't click to me at first that they're like looking at this guy as like it wasn't until Lisbon was sort of like, oh, he's afraid of heights. That's whatever. That I was like, oh wait, this guy's on the list. I should probably like really tune in here and like see if there's any clues. Because at first I'm like, okay, we're doing like sort of a filler episode. Um, and then so the first 8 episodes are good. The 8th episode is really really good, right? We've like the fact that he gets him with his bare hand is so clever, and like the fact that like I saw someone on like Reddit or something, it was like they spend the whole series showing how avoidant he is of physical confrontation, and then to like physically strangle him is just like it's very good. Like it shows everything you need to know. Um, it's just like there is such a drop off so immediately after that for the majority of the season that it's just like, oh, like you really, it would have even like, it would have been better even if they did like a few, like a shortened season and wrapped it up and then started the next season with something different. It's just for
Yeah,
that to be like in the same season is just so, for that to have so much of the season in the same season that it wraps up is just like, it just almost like over, not, it doesn't overshadow it in terms of like, obviously you're not going to forget that, but it just kind of like brings the energy so far down so quickly and is like, okay, we're done
yeah,
with that. We're washing our hands of that whole thing. Like I don't know. It's just, and I did think of another thing that I would have loved to see after that moment too. Like we've discussed, right? It would have been cool to
yeah,
see flashback from Red John.
yeah,
It would have been cool to see Jane like dealing with it for a couple episodes, or Jane kind of like trying to not go to prison for a couple episodes, like
yeah,
which would have also been cool because the whole series we've been hearing like I'm fine with being arrested, I'm fine with going to prison. It would have actually been cool to see him be like, okay, well I've done it now. I actually don't want to go to prison. Like now how do I
yeah,
get out of this? So that would have been kind of cool. The thing that I think would have been really a really really cool way to end that episode instead of him like running or whatever they do in slow motion would have been if they like if it was just like a zoom out or whatever of him like at his family's graves because they're close to the cemetery.
Mhm.
Obviously you can't quite do that because the FBI end up going to the
Yeah, right,
cemetery.
right.
But if it ended up with him like crouching in front of
In
their
the
graves and
cemetery.
like crying or something, whatever, like, or him being content that he did it or like something like that, that would have been so like meaningful because it would have just brought it all together.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this so much, like
yeah,
on our own. I do like there's things they could have done better. I think a flashback, like there's things that could have made it interesting.
right.
Ultimately, this is why, and I've thought about it too. Like if they ended it with him running, like that episode was the end of the show, I
Mm-hmm.
think it would have been good. I think the reason that I do like that they continue, um, is the fact that like part of why I like Jane so much as a character is because he's like charismatic. You like him, and you see that he has like a good heart. Like he does these really kind things, but he never wants like credit for it, which I
Mm-hmm.
really admire. Someone that's like trying to do good just for the sake of helping others. It's not about his own, like making me
Yeah.
look good. But then he's also like a jerk at times. But it's sort of this like moral dilemma that his whole purpose in the show is this like big quest for something that I fundamentally like disagree with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm very against revenge, and I also don't believe it can satisfy what he thinks it will. And so he's this character that's all about this one mission, and it's like he finally does it and is content. But I like the fact that the show continues because ultimately, like that won't ever bring this contentment of like you murdered somebody, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
something dark about it, and so I like the fact that it continues with okay, he actually does care a lot about these people that have been in his life that he's trying to act like are secondary to killing Red John. But in the end, it's like the relationships are like the best part of his life there, right? And so
Yeah.
I think there's something kind of special about that, which I like that they then dive into and go deep with, and him and Lisbon start dating, all those sorts of things. Um,
Yeah. For me,
but
I don't
yeah,
have a problem with the fact that it continues. It's just the fact that
it's
like
so
it
completely different.
happens. It is so like we are done with that. We're never touching it again. That storyline is over. We're never mentioning it. And even that would have been fine if it wasn't so immediate. Like
Yeah, yeah.
for me, it's like I don't mind that they did it. I just don't like that it's so like if they it's not like the episodes right after are crucial to anything really, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't if you were to cut out let's say 4 random episodes from the rest of that season, you're not really missing anything huge.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they it wasn't like there was a rush to get to anything important or anything. They could have spent 3 episodes or something exploring Jane, exploring Red John. Like they had the episodes to play with. They
Yeah,
just
yeah,
chose to
right.
do nothing with them instead of like, how can we really finish out this? And like we were saying, they give us no answers for some stuff that it's just like, well, like, okay, why was that even important then? Like, apart
Yeah,
from just being like, oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Like there's things it's like, wow, I would love to see how that pays off, and then it doesn't. Plus, this was something that I called a long time before it happened, and it was one that you kind of tried to like talk me into still being invested in. Christina Fry, what the heck? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
whole that thing happens. It's super interesting. She kind of like whatever. She malfunctions. She's kind of like brain dead. Then there's almost like okay, maybe she's still going to be useful for something. And then she's gone.
yeah.
She's like
That's one that doesn't make sense.
there was just I don't know. Whereas other shows do a really try to like bring things back, keep things involved, whatever, tie things up. I felt like this show a lot of times was just super satisfied with saying like, okay, they're gone and they're gone, and that's it. There's no
Yeah,
explanation needed. They're just never going to show up again.
yeah.
And then there's another character like that who we can talk about right here, but unfortunately, I only gave season 6 a 6 out of 10 as well because the majority of it I was just like, ah. And plus, right? So I don't mind the episodes where they're just doing normal stuff, right? I don't hate them. I don't dislike
Mhm.
them. I enjoy parts of each one. But these episodes where they're just doing normal crimes are significantly less enjoyable to me than the ones in every previous season because
Yeah,
there is absolutely no hope of like, okay, well, this might have a connection to Red John or like that's gone. So they've
mhm.
lost, right? So I said I was annoyed by them kind of like they sort of dangle it over your head, like, oh, we might have something in this episode. But like
Yeah.
when that's not there, it's sort of like, okay, well,
Check out.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get it. And I like the little side plots they bring up in season 6 more than you do as well.
Yeah, like they're
But
fine to
I
me. They're fine to me, but I'm not like, wow, oh,
yeah,
that was
yeah,
an awesome 3 episodes because of that side. Like it's just
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, I mean, sure.
yeah. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But all right. Season
Okay.
7.
Season 7, you have it what, 5?
Yep.
So I have it 6. Here's the character I'm mentioning. Fisher. Like, what the heck? She's
Yeah.
just in there for 14 episodes or whatever it is, and then she's gone. And I actually I think I told you, right? Like I don't like the way she spoke. And it wasn't like I didn't like her voice. It wasn't I didn't like whatever. I didn't the specific combination of her mouth and the way that she says words. And so it was just like weird to me. I don't know. And
Yeah.
it's
I
just one
don't
of those
know.
things. Like it's nothing against whatever. It's kind of there. But I actually really liked her character and the dynamic that she had, especially
Yeah.
once Jane and Lisbon start kind of,
And
Jane starts liking Lisbon a little more. I like that you can also see Fisher start to get a little bit jealous. Where at first you think she comes in as this character who is just like, okay, Jane's kind of freed himself and she can whatever.
right.
He's
You
finally
think
moved
she's
on from his wife or whatever, which is, I don't. Oh, I didn't love that aspect of stuff
Mhm.
sometimes where like I liked that Jane was so like, okay, I had my wife and
Yeah,
my kid, and
yeah,
now that's unfortunately that's gone. But I had that time. I'm on to something else. That's not something I want anymore.
yeah.
But then you sort of think like, okay, maybe he's done with that. He's moving. He's ready to find someone new.
Mhm.
So this girl is here, and then it turns out she's an agent, and it's like, oh wow, all right. So that was really good. Like she did a really good job there. But then
And
you
you
sort
think
of
she totally played Jane.
yes, but then you do sort of see like, okay, she maybe does kind of like him. Like that wasn't all
Yeah.
fake. And then they say, see you later.
Yeah. I think that's got to be just an example of like you're writing a show and they had a contract dispute with the actor and it was just like, all right, well,
Yeah, what did they
we already
say? She
like
like got a new job or something,
she got
right?
like
Like,
transferred.
yeah,
It has to be, right? Like you finished season 6 and it was like, all right, you're coming back, right? She's like, I won't, money
right.
doesn't line up. And so then it's like, well, we can't bring you back, but season 6 is already aired. So
Yes.
you transfer, you're leaving. Like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just they kind of have to do it, which is unfortunate, but I agree. Um,
Um,
but overall, so season 7,
mhm.
having it 5, the fact that it doesn't have Red John, it's just like the Red John storyline is what makes the Mentalist what it is. And there's also something about like the little theme music, them being in the
Oh,
CBI, them being in the
yes, we didn't
CBI.
even talk about the theme music.
Yeah, the whole show, season 1 through 6, 8, has this whole scene like theme, a vibe to the work. The group is the same, and as much as I like the theme music is fine. The new
I think it's very good. Like we're like the original theme music, right?
yeah.
I think it's
Well,
very good.
I'm saying I think the season 7's
Oh,
music
okay.
is like it's fine, but it's just
Hmm.
it's not like
They messed with it.
it's not the Mentalist, and so that's
Yeah.
where it feels a little too much like a different show that I do miss it. But the reason I have it above seasons 1 and 2 is like I mentioned before, I do really like seeing a lot of the relationships develop, and it does bring like a closure to the whole show that I do
Yeah.
kind of like. Um, even seeing Cho reach that spot, which is like he the whole time is like he's a real like
That was good. Yeah, I like
he's a
that
good cop, right?
closure.
Like I love Rigsby, but you're never like Rigsby might be like
Oh
moving
man,
into a higher.
man, I never got to explain this to you. Remember when I texted you that like Rigsby looks funny when he is searching houses or whatever? Like
No,
there
what?
was one episode I texted you and I was like, man, it
He
just
looks
cracks
weird.
me up
Okay.
watching him. It's
Yes.
because he goes in, right? And it's when he has his whatever his
Yeah.
this,
The
and it's
flashlight and
because
the gun.
everyone else is kind of like boom, and Rigsby goes in, he's like he's just so like
Yeah, yeah,
and everyone else is like slowly like panning or whatever, and Rigsby's like
yeah.
is so intense all the time, and
He's
dude, it just cracked me
yeah.
up.
He's just like a goofball who's great
Yes.
in the show and like he's a good cop, but it's
Yep.
not like, oh shoot, you might be
Yeah.
heading to the top. Cho is, right? And
Right.
they dangle that throughout where there's the time
Yep.
where LaRoche makes him like the leader of the team for an episode and things
Yep.
like that. And so I think seeing him get there is cool. Jane and Lisbon, all these things like I do like in the end. So that's why the closure that it brings to the show, and it sort of, especially on the second watch through, and it was weird because I saw that season completely before ever seeing the first 6 seasons the first time
Whoa.
I watched.
Wow.
It was
Okay.
like I watched season 7 on TV as it came out.
Yeah.
It's the only one I watched through. I'd seen sporadic episodes, watched season 7. So that's just kind of weird. But
Yeah, that is weird.
it just even now it was kind of this nice like the show's done. I'm gonna watch these 13 episodes to just sort of like say goodbye. Almost like this
Mm,
is just gonna like close it out and it's gonna wrap stuff up.
yeah.
And so because of that, there's something that I do like about it. But
Yeah. So for me, the reason it's above season two is because although there's no Red John, it's also not dangling there, right? Like, so the thing that frustrated me about season two was that season
it's dangling
one
there, but
set
not.
it up, and season two did not really follow through, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Season seven, it's like you go into that with that
There's no
expectation of like,
disappointment.
yeah, exactly. You're like I'm not, I'm watching the end of the show that they're wrapping it up, whatever. Personally, I didn't love like the finale. I didn't think it was like a super strong finale. Not necessarily because of the like plot or anything. I just didn't think that like I don't know the way that it finished sort of was. I don't know. It just didn't kind of
I mean, season
feel
seven,
like a finale to me.
realistically, nothing happens.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
no,
it's just like the one guy's like running after them, but they're just planning a
right,
wedding. Like
right.
there's no investigating that happens.
No, yeah, it's
But
just, and I don't know. It
I
was
think
just
that
something about like the closing scene almost where I was just like, it doesn't feel like it felt like there was more episodes after. Like it didn't feel like they fully closed it almost. Um, I don't know why.
yeah, I don't know.
Um,
I like how they end it. I think it
I
works.
think it's
But
fine. Like I
yeah,
think it's totally fine. It just wasn't like wow they really brought that home. Um,
yeah,
see episode 10, great episode. Um,
that one
wow,
hits hard.
really good episode. And
I knew
like
it was coming. I was still
this is
so
the other
sad.
right. The other one where I'm like they just what they set out to do in this episode they nailed it. Um, I did not see it coming at all. And I this was like I told you on text like I didn't love Wiley by himself. Like he was fine. I thought he was fine as kind of like the quirky
Mhm.
side character. Like, oh man, let's kick it to Wiley. What can he find? And he's like
Yeah,
at the computer. When he started getting more of like a presence, I was kind of like, all right, I don't really like part of it, right, was they introduced this character second half of season six, and then it almost felt like they were sort of like trying to give him a finale and
yeah,
like similar to the other characters where I was like, all right, we just met this guy. I really you do not need like I don't really care what happens to him. He's not one of the core like five
yeah,
characters that
yeah,
we've seen the whole show. Um, but there was something about his little dynamic with Vega that I was like, good for Wiley, man. Nice, good for
yeah,
him.
yeah,
Nice, good for him. And then it's just like, oh wow, okay, not good for him.
yeah.
um, and that was probably the time like I probably liked Wiley the most in that episode where it's just like dealing with it and
You
whatever.
just feel for him.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I also so see seven. Like I told you, Abbott is the whole thing with like Abbott is weird. Like it just doesn't feel like a natural progression sort of for those characters. The way that they are brought into the FBI and then to end up being like, oh hey, we're like, oh have your wedding at my house. Like it just felt like they we're like, okay, well we need to kind of like make these characters like each other somehow. So like they're just gonna like each other basically. So like I don't know.
I don't know.
I liked
I like Abbott a lot. I love
I actually
Abbott.
do. I like him as a person. Like I like him as a person. I just don't really like how he got from when he was introduced to like where he ended up. Like it just doesn't
Yeah,
seem like that would be how that happened. Like
yeah,
it's there's just so much disdain there. Like okay, I really don't want to work for the FBI, but it's the only way I can come back. And like okay, now Lisbon has to have a job, and they're like, oh well, we don't want to. And then you can tell that it's sort of like well, we want Jane, Lisbon, and Cho to all work there. So like well, they're all going to end up there. It's
Yeah.
like
I think
realistically, it would Abbott, right? Why would he, he shut down the CBI because it got out of control or whatever. Would you then bring in three of the people who were at the forefront of helping it get out of control to then work for the like? Do you kind
I
of
mean
see what
I
I'm saying a little
yeah,
bit?
I think so. The thing is I understand why you bring in Cho because
Right.
he was just like good cop, right? Like
That's all.
um
Like it makes sense that he would end up being a
yeah.
cop again.
Lisbon like is in charge of the CBI. I get why you wouldn't want her. And then
Right.
obviously Jane. But then it comes to a point where it's like someone above Abbott's pay grade wants Jane,
Right.
and eventually the only way you get Jane is through Lisbon.
True.
So I do think it they progress it fast. Even if there was like one episode where you get this in season 7, where the team all just comes around to like help Abbott, and like Jane is like, no, I will put together a plan. We're gonna do whatever it takes to like help you with something big.
Yeah.
If that almost came earlier, where it was like Abbott doesn't want to go to Jane because there's that kind of disdain,
Yeah.
and then
And then he takes it
and
on.
then he
Yes.
helps him, then it would almost be like you could have this moment at the end of like, oh, okay,
Right.
like we do like each other, and then it almost would have made sense.
Yeah.
But it is
I agree.
when you think back on it, it's like they've developed so much to the point of being friends, but you're kind of like, well, when did that happen? Because
It's
Abbott
it's
didn't.
sort of it sort of happens between seasons.
Right. It's
Right.
like
You sort
Abbott.
of end season 6 in that same area of like, okay, well, we
Yeah.
work together, but it's not really my choice, but I'm trying to make the best of it. And then season
Yeah.
7 kind of starts with like, we're on good terms. I
Right.
totally agree. That would have been a good, like
Yeah.
if they had done
So
that at the end of season 6, if that was like almost maybe like the season 6 finale almost was like, okay. And it also would have, to your point about Jane, like being a genuinely good person, that would have shown that as well. Like,
right
okay,
where
I'm going to
it's
help this guy.
yeah, and so um yeah. So it
Agreed.
is what it is, but I like Abbott, but I can see it. It happens fast. They
Yeah.
speed stuff up because it is
Right.
quick. But
And yeah, I actually do really like him also. Like
yeah.
he was actually probably one of my favorite characters by the end of the season of just like watching when he was on screen. I liked what I was watching.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it just is like kind of weird. I think Cho is really good in season 7 as well.
Yeah.
But it is
Absolutely.
just sort of a to me. I was trying to explain it to my parents without like completely spoiling anything. In case, just I don't think they'll ever watch it, but just in case,
Yeah.
right? It sort of feels like the second or the last like 2/3 of season 6 and then all of season 7. It almost feels similar in a way to like seasons 8 and 9 of The Office, where it's
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it's the same show on title and majority of the characters, but there's like these new characters and some of them are pretty good and some of them are kind of like I don't really
Yeah.
care for them, and but it just doesn't have like the core
It's
of
not the
what
same
made
show.
the first however many seasons really interesting, right? Like Michael leaves
Yeah.
and then you don't have Red John. Like it feels similar in a
Yeah.
way to me.
Yeah.
um yeah, and then all right, so let's talk about the music really quickly because I do want to touch on that. I think the theme up until they change it is actually a really
Oh yeah.
good theme. Like
Really
not
good.
in the sense of like The Office where it's like, oh, I'm humming the theme song or whatever,
No, no,
Friends
no.
where I'm humming it, but in the sense like it's not drawn out, it's not too long, it captures the vibe of the show. If I was watching it like if the skip intro thing pops out, is I'm not skipping it. I don't need to
Yeah.
skip it. I'll sit there
Right.
and let it play out and whatever. And
Just a
it's kind
couple
of like, okay,
seconds.
here we go. When they change it, it's just like they add all these bells and whistles and like synthetics, like like all these random sounds into it. And it's like, what the heck? It sounds like
Yeah.
someone took the original theme, gave it to like a sixth grader, and just let them kind of like pound away on a keyboard, and then gave it back and like, okay, this is what I
Yeah.
added to it.
Yeah. It's weird. And I like the theme is so good at first. And even the music they put, like whenever Red John is involved, you know how there's like that little I don't know, it's not like a drum, but it's just like there's like this kind of
Mm,
noise in the background that always happens the first time you see the face or when you know like Red John's about to be there. There's just
yeah,
things like that that just they do so well. And so I
yeah,
agree. It like that's all part of what made it the Mentalist. And so you lose that. Like it doesn't feel the same at the end. But
right.
I agree.
Also shout out to what's his name, Bruno Heller, for just making sure that everyone knows that he created it all the time. All right, it's at the end of every title sequence, but then it's also the first thing that pops up when the episode ends.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
it's like, hey, just in case you weren't paying attention at the beginning, I'm going to tell you again at the end. I
like
created this thing.
I will always know the name Bruno Heller because
Like, it's just so funny. Like, there's certain things that, right? Like the cast comes up at the beginning, but it's not at the end. Like, the end is always kind of like the special guests and the producers and
Mhm.
whatever. But he's like, I am going in both places. I created this show, and I
You're
will
gonna know
make
it at the
sure you
start, you're
know
gonna know it
it.
at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So shout out to him. Just
Yeah.
kind of a funny thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So not it actually wasn't as different as I was thinking it could be.
No.
Apart from that, like season 1, I think it's probably the only one that we really disagreed on heavily.
Yeah. I mean season 6 I have two. You have towards the bottom, but
True. True. True.
yeah. It's sort of like
Um,
six yeah. But I knew you would have 4, 5, 1, 2. I
yeah,
didn't know which one.
they're just the most consistently good
Red John.
seasons. Like
Yeah.
where right. So I mean, there's maybe debate on if you watch it the first time versus second time versus third, right? Well, if certain seasons like build on each other, but 4 and 5, no matter what, like
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
uh, time that you're watching it, there's no doubt that you are building towards something
yeah.
in those
So,
seasons.
but that's Mentalist. I stand on it. Greatest show ever made. My favorite show is in a category of his own. This show has really cemented it too. Like I used to go back and forth one, two. Now it's just like this is
Really
this is one. Yeah.
interesting.
And I
So,
think
and what was two? The Office?
I think The Office was too. And I think the reason was the wrestling match I have is the fact that they're just so completely different. So
Yeah,
the aspects of the Mentalist I like is not even right, like very different. Like it's just a story.
but it is interesting that right. So, what makes this like for me, right? The reason I like it is Red John, and like Red John's most interesting. But the reason that it's so much better to you is because of the relationships. When that's kind of like The Office is pretty much that's what there is. That's why
Yeah.
that's the only
I
really reason I like The Office. So
so
it
I
is
mean it's
interesting.
well it's the Red John storyline is just so good, but I just
Yeah,
love Jane. Like I just love him so
yeah,
much as a character.
he
I love
is
the
great.
dynamics. It's just like this show just is my favorite. Like I was so invested in rewatching this show and just the
Uh-huh.
nature of The Office. I'm not going to have that same sort of experience with it. Like I'll rewatch The Office, love it, think it's funny, but this show is just too good to me. I have to. It's number one without a doubt. So
Okay, I don't.
yeah, obviously you don't feel the same.
I
What
don't
I
know
got to
if you
do
want to do.
now?
You,
Now what I have to do? I have to go watch Sherlock, and we'll have to do that. Which is I
the
suppose
thing
not
is,
fair because
it's
I've
the
seen
but
it
the
and I
thing
haven't.
is, and the thing about Sherlock though is, it's basically if you were to take the Red John episodes of The Mentalist and cut everything else out,
Sort of, yeah,
it's
and
sort of similar.
shorter than that, but sort of,
What is Sherlock is
yeah,
shorter?
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we don't
Okay,
need to get into that.
let's just do basic math though. Like the number of Mentalist episodes that are somewhat connected, at least somewhat connected to
But
Red
let's
John.
okay, but if we're gonna count those pieces, then we can't just go, okay, well, there's 5 minutes at the end.
No,
That whole
so
episode counts. So so it would
right.
have to be like, okay, you get those 5 minutes.
Let's just put it this way: how many Sherlock episodes are there?
13.
13, and they're
13
all
and they're hour and a half.
okay. So you got 13 and an hour and a half. Let's just go
Yeah.
total. Let's just think about it. I'm just not going to do that, Matt. So that's
And they're not all Moriarty, but I would still say the last three are a similar
yeah,
like they're big episodes.
yeah. So 13 episodes, 90 minutes each,
Yeah.
right? All right, that's 1,170 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so divide it by 40. That means 29 episodes. You tell me there's not more than 29 episodes that
I
are.
don't think there are.
Think about season 5 and 4 though, where it's so heavy.
Okay, so
It actually, doing the math, it
it's
might be
close.
close.
It is
If
close
if you're not counting,
because if you're only counting like if he's not in it and you're only counting if it's not a direct one and you only count the parts that are, it's very close, I think. Because he's only the character is only in I think 6 episodes.
right, but I mean, there's a number of episodes that are fully devoted to his crimes or his murders or chasing after him.
Right. That's I think it is close.
It might be, but either way, the difference with Sherlock is I've seen it before and it's in my
Yeah.
top five, so it
Right.
would not be the same as my number one, and you haven't ever seen it. But
Do
it
you
would be.
want to do you want to know where like it wouldn't get in my top five, obviously.
Well, I mean,
I
I
don't
hope not.
I don't think it's in the top 10 for me personally. And after that, obviously, I don't know what kind of where it falls, but I don't think it quite
I mean, yeah,
like
based on the ratings you're giving to it, if
yeah.
it's not if
Like
it's in
for
your
me, it
top,
was like for me the Red John parts were really really interesting. Like if there was more Red John, I probably would I would
if
really
the
like
show
it.
is
There's
only
just
Red John, that's top 10 for you, right?
probably yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Obviously it's a little bit tough to say because like you can't
you
some
can't.
stuff would
Yeah,
have to change to make it work.
yeah,
But I think if it was dedicated to Red John, I think they probably would have made a top 10 worthy show. Yeah.
yeah. That's what I thought.
Um,
Sorry.
but yeah, I don't know if I see myself rewatching it necessarily just because there's so like if I were to rewatch it, I would probably just find the Red John episodes and rewatch it.
Yeah, that's right. But
Oh.
hey, I'm glad you watched it. It was fun.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm glad I watched it too. It was like I always like checking out new shows and whatnot. So
Yeah.
solid one. And I do really like the character. I think he's a really good actor. I don't know that I would be able to watch like he's kind of in that category where I don't know if I'd be able to watch like more of his stuff just
I
because he's so
I've
ascertained to me now. But
I've seen he's in a movie that I watched called Margin Call. It's the
hmm,
only other thing I've seen him in.
was it weird to see
It was
him?
weird. Yeah, probably I
Yeah,
didn't love the movie. Then it's
right.
also just like this is whack. Like this
Yeah,
isn't right.
but like as that character, he is really,
Perfect.
really, really
Perfect.
solid. Yeah.
Yeah. So all right.